Reproduction and inheritance. In this video we are going to look at Introduction to reproduction and inheritance, Sexual and asexual reproduction, Meiosis and mitosis, DNA, chromosomes and gene, determination of sex. Introduction to reproduction and inheritance. Reproduction is the process by which new living things are created from one parent or two parents. This process is necessary for species to continue. Inheritance, on the other hand, is the way how traits and characteristics are passed down from parents to their children, explaining how these traits show up in each generation. Types of reproduction. The two major forms of reproduction are sexual and asexual. The table compares sexual and asexual reproduction across several aspects. Sexual reproduction involves two parents, whereas asexual reproduction involves only one parent. Cell division occurs through meiosis in sexual reproduction, whereas in asexual reproduction cell division occurs through mitosis. In sexual reproduction, gametes are formed through the fusion of male and female sex cells, but in asexual reproduction, there is no formation of gamete. In sexual reproduction, offspring are genetically different from their parents. On the other hand, in asexual reproduction, offspring are clones that are genetically identical to the parent organism. Fertilization occurs in sexual reproduction, but in asexual reproduction, there is no fertilization. In sexual reproduction, the offspring and species can exhibit a wide range of variations in their results, whereas in asexual reproduction, there is no mixing of genetic information. The sexual reproduction process takes a long time to complete, but the asexual process is completed in a very short period of time. Meiosis and mitosis. Both meiosis and mitosis are fundamental processes of cell division, each serving distinct purposes. Meiosis is crucial for sexual reproduction, introducing genetic diversity, while mitosis supports growth, repair, and asexual reproduction by maintaining genetic continuity. Meiosis. Sexual reproduction involves the fusion of gametes, which are specialized sex cells produced by the male and female reproductive systems. In males, sperm cells are produced in the testes through a process called spermatogenesis, and in females, egg cells are produced in the ovaries through a process called oogenesis. Unlike normal cells, gametes only contain half the genetic material of the parent cell and therefore called as haploid cells. Each haploid cell genetically distinct from the parent cell that gave rise to them. This process is essential for sexual reproduction and contributes to genetic diversity in populations. So when the male and female gametes join, they form a normal cell that contain genetic information from each parent, and so called a diploid cell. The sperm cell has the male gamete, which contains half the genetic material, haploid, N, with 23 chromosomes in humans. And the egg cell, ovum, that has the female gamete, which also contains half the genetic material, haploid, N, with 23 chromosomes in humans, and they both join together during fertilization and makes a diploid cell. Now let's see how the cell division occurs during meiosis. Meiosis 1. The homologous chromosomes pair up and exchange genetic material through a process called crossing over. They then separate into two daughter cells, each with a unique combination of genetic material. Meiosis 2. The sister chromatids of each chromosome separate into four daughter cells, each with a single set of chromosomes. Key things to remember in meiosis. Meiosis starts with a diploid cell that has two sets of chromosomes, one from each parent. In humans, this means the cell has 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. Meiosis is the process that produces gametes, which are haploid cells. Meiosis has two cell divisions, namely meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Meiosis 1 produces two haploid cells, where each cell contains a full set of chromosomes consisting of one member from each homologous pair. Meiosis 2 further separates the chromatids and leads to the formation of 4 haploid cells, gametes. Mitosis. Mitosis is a type of cell division that occurs in all other cells of the body, non-reproductive, and the cell divides only once. This leads to the formation of 2 genetically identical diploid cells. DNA, chromosomes and gene. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule that contains genetic instructions for all organisms. The majority of DNA is found inside the cell's nucleus. The genetic material of a cell is composed of DNA. The shape of DNA is called a double helix, a spiral made of 2 chains wound together. Chromosomes are thin strands of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. They are subdivided into genes. In most cells, chromosomes are located in functional pairs in the nucleus. Humans have 46 chromosomes arranged in 23 pairs. The small section of DNA on a chromosome that encodes function is called a gene. It is the basic functional unit of heredity, or inheritance. The genome of an organism is the complete set of its genetic material, including genes that code for proteins and non-coding DNA sequences. The human genome is made up of up to 3 billion base pairs of DNA. The sequencing of the human genome has numerous benefits, such as identifying disease-causing genes, developing treatments for inherited disorders, and tracing human ancestry and migration. Alleles. Alleles are different forms of genes. For instance, the gene responsible for eye color has an allele for blue eyes and another for brown eyes. Each living organism receives 2 alleles for every gene, 1 from each parent. An allele can be dominant or recessive. Dominant and recessive allele. An allele that is dominant is expressed even when only 1 copy is present. The dominant allele is represented by the capital letter A. Polydactyly is a genetic condition that results in the presence of extra fingers or toes, caused by a dominant allele. Other examples of dominant alleles include high blood pressure and tone deafness. A recessive allele will not express a particular trait if a dominant allele is present. A recessive gene stays inactive until it is paired with another recessive gene. The lowercase letter A represents the recessive allele. A recessive allele is expressed only if the individual has 2 copies of the same allele. Dimples is an example of recessive allele. Cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive allele. Homozygous and heterozygous. If an individual has 2 copies of the same allele, they are said to be homozygous for that allele. When an individual has homozygous alleles, both alleles for a specific characteristic are identical. For instance, an individual may have 2 dominant alleles, written as AA, or 2 recessive alleles, written as AA. When an organism has 2 different alleles for a particular trait, such as having 1 dominant allele and 1 recessive allele, AA, it is said to be heterozygous for that trait. Inherited disorder. An inherited disorder is a medical condition that occurs due to genetic abnormalities in a person's DNA or genome. It is also referred as genetic disorder. The causes of inherited disorders range from small gene mutations to entire chromosome changes. Inheritance of certain alleles can lead to the development of certain disorders. Polydactyly is an inherited disorder that causes extra fingers or toes. Cystic fibrosis is an inherited disorder caused by a recessive allele. It causes changes in the cell membranes, leading to the production of thick mucus. It causes damage to the lungs, digestive system, and other organs. Genetic cross. The intentional breeding of 2 selected, genetically different individuals results in offspring with half of each parent's genetic makeup, known as genetic crosses. A common use of them is to investigate the inheritance pattern of a specific trait across generations. Punnett squares predict genetic cross outcomes, revealing offspring genotypes and phenotypes. It shows the possible offspring combinations that could be produced. Determination of sex. The normal human cells contain 23 pairs of chromosomes. The sex of the offspring is determined by one of these pairs. Males possess one X and one Y chromosome, while females have two X chromosomes. In human females, both sex chromosomes are identical and referred to as XX. This means that females are homozygous for their sex chromosomes. In males, the sex chromosomes are different, XY, and they are heterozygous. A Punnett square can be used to determine the probability of offspring being male or female. The probability is always 50% in humans, as there are two XX outcomes and two XY outcomes.